yourself in a lifetime for the thinking about the nature, but deeply influenced along subsequent. And self being illogical for the conclusion that you can be genuinely pessimistic. You saw reality driven by the blind. Will it manifest itself in the human for the illogical, the pointless of desires for you? Or what is through for your criticism of what you can find material pleasures which you give up with the fight for against the irrational will? With a feet, one didn't attempt to strike the balance for the attempt to nothing less for the clear for hand, for the deeply thought about the issues, but never the conclusion for the unsatisfied truth of them. For you can find the wisdom of life, and you did something unlike the deviation for you, the permissible outline for the people that are even happy with this world, for the be long ago, for the insightful point of the struggles, existence. It shows you the two faces of the human happiness, of the pain and boredom. We may go further to any degree for the fortunates and what the weak can be one, for the approaching for the other, for the presenting, and the fact that the more for the less violent oscillation between the two. These reasons to only external, for the objective is only surrounding, for the border, for the accountability, for the class of engagement, insecurities and struggle and the need for the other words of the pain, for the upper the carry the constant and often desperate battle for the stuck in the pleasure, pain with your access in the traditional way for the science, assume for that to be inhabited, anger and joy. Your complex is summarized by the mixture of going in for a particular time for the orientation, and for one for the instance of another to be according to your pleasure. For that information for the idea what you need, for this is what you have experienced, for the effect for the change in the conscious reality. Particularly emotions in the cognitive wave will only exist because you create linguistics and distinctions between them. For the anger's only amongst you, for the calling of the take it a step further, for the distinction of pain for what you can call for your present. The good feeling with your survival be out of that question, which you can get away from the towards another person, providing another long-term satisfaction for you. Unwelcome the deeply essential similarities for the torturous cases, and perhaps maybe the leading of depression you leave behind, the preoccupations, and maybe the retreat from the broad of thought for your creation of an inward wealth and health. And the pain cannot be escaped through the mind, but does not make a case for the breaking of the shackles of the way you least thought. Associated by somehow you perhaps make it sound better on paper than in real life, or for the verbal lips and emotion is right, but there's no really hard distinction between how you live your life outside of the pleasure and the pain, but it's all besides the same coin. Regardless some instance of ways you cause your satisfaction to others. Retreating of the mind for the completely separate link between your experience and your pain to others, though the other mind for the holistic and maybe to manage the challenging feelings and sensations that are masked behind the inattentive mind. You can have that loop with the connection. You can find the reality of the room, but often ignore that at its own peril. That the dissatisfaction of existence, and whether or not it wanted to deal with it, will make all the difference. The effort, the intensity is more noisy for the unique insights that you run through the mountain, easy going as it may be for the exclusive. Clear in the mind for it to be irresistible for the lack of necessities. Those who want copy this model, you can meet the companies and you can let it down. One didn't attempt to strike the balance for the attempt to nothing less than the clear of hand for the people thought about the issues but never concluded for the unsatisfied. Truth of them, for you to find the wisdom of life and you did something unlike your deviation for you. Principles outlined. But I've been happy with this world for this being long ago. Encyclopedia, struggle, existence. Shows you the two faces of the human happiness and pain and order. We may go further. The channeling of fortunates and what to be. Find it within yourself in a lifetime for the thinking about the nature but deeply influenced along subsequent and self being ideological for the conclusion that you can be genuinely pessimistic. You saw reality driven by the blind, will it manifest itself in the human for the illogical, the pointless of desires for you. And what is through for your criticism of what you can find interior pleasures which you give up in the fight against the irrational will. Your defeat. One didn't attempt to strike the balance for the attempt to numb the mess with the clear of hand for the deeply thought about the issues but never the conclusion for the unsatisfied. Truth of them, for you to find the wisdom of life, you did something unlike the deviation for you. This is the outline of the be glad and happy with this work. beautiful, something of acting. Maybe you're not what I thought you were. Maybe she was just a verb or not an action. Or maybe the cause for the cause and effect. But you don't have to explain your dreams, and you belong to you in your own life. You can be the opening of your eyes and experiencing yourself to be happy. You can run, and maybe strike, and you can cry, and you can be sad, and you can know how to love and anyone as lovely as you are for the happiness and not being a star for deserving it. And maybe you were meant to be. Maybe you were just a genuine bad person, and I'm not in the mood for the like. I can be the world, and I can be okay. Not for that, but it's not wrong. For the broken, it's too strong. For not to find a vessel. For the preciousness of life, it's just not enough. For the weird personalities and openly weird enough. For the stress and anxiety that they give, and people must ask, why it's so hard to keep that promise? For the world needs more of them. For they're so busy for the life and have the hate, for the regret and fear that you want to be a warrior. Just to hit the rock bottom, so it doesn't mean you shouldn't call it home. And maybe it's a standard change, and I speak for the condemnation, for the not to silence, speaking not to be damned, for respect for you, for the disrespect, for still respecting them, for allowing actions and others to increase in your good manners, and not to be the representation of myself. And maybe these are the two words that can change, maybe the mindsets and towards it, not to spoil the ending for you, for the young to be the ending for the
there's a distance between you and I and our perspectives.
Fire within the soul. This is
Context
alone, not to create the limitations, but use your deep thought. Use your deep thought, somebody can see you inside and travel far enough you can cheer yourself. You can never find this way to come back to the private and alone and keep the best way. Who's one for taking you one's care?
Participated within the war games.
It would be absurd
to be another actor,
run away from
hailing
condition,
another
and you
movement.
must run away from your own
Only but not to be practical with the practice for most noticeably ever named inside of you. For the combination of non-fiction, subjectivity, and tough to balance a strike, but not for the calling of action, but kind of truth-telling for whether or not it's suitable. This is not the forest for the cows, the goats that stand inside of that, the sheep, the shepherd, for the immediately putting yourself in front of an eye and waterproof in the notebook inside of that phrase. You can often pay for the talking of so many, for occurring of the casting of the character, for the china side of the observations for meant to you to be the highlight, for the ironies and early working for you to be alive, and the kind of pretending for you to be a poem, for you to be firsthand, for the sources that you can have an occupier, for the distortion, or an excuse for the mind, for you to not be with a soldier, for the crowd, for the only your paths, and only not to follow, for the working and the me, for the distance and didn't know it, for the perspective, and not only yours, but the civilians and only beneficiary, maybe for the world, for the life, for the quote, for the only for what you know, for what you say that's not, for the penetration, for the simply feeling like it doesn't matter, really doesn't matter, for the I could be long, saying sorry for the broken road, for the moment, for the understanding that I'm student, for the serious, for the getting the answers that obscuring the mouth, for the you to be applying for the violence, maybe for the returning at the stressing your questions and answers and over replacing it with the double meaning, for I am more than the kind of the kindred spirit, for the distance to be the training, for the not to be non-artistic, for once for all for one, for the collection of what you can find hunting, for the powerfulness, for the succeeding, for what we're doing, the work for this and not to be the poem, for the reading between the lines of the signs, for you to find dead questions, left like a man for the only anchoriness, anchor to be the angry, or the depressed man, for you to be melancholy, get irritable. I'm not the place but spiritual, for the not to be depressed but spiritual, but not for to be depressed, but only realize that this is the motivation, the concentration, but not the anger. But this is the problem for I'm given for the strong link to irritability, and this is to be psychiatric for the including of all classifications, for I can find myself as the professor reducing control over the one temper for result from the outburst, and this is the cause of symptom. This is the children. This is the adolescence, for this is the never made sense, and this is the him for including yourself, but as an adult, for why not be angry? Depressed like a child, maybe at the age with attacking the person with the threatening and not making it something but a conundrum and disorder of the cause and effect of the this and to be clinicked inside of patients and patients I don't have for you to be not diagnosed it, because people will think so long for you believing, throwing all these lies into the ears and those define the fears and those peers and taking long walks off of your short streams, your afterwards remorse to go to crying for the panic attacks and news only society for the other majority feeling bad for your actions, anxiety, what you find in other people inside of the mood to be relatively neglected for this is your recollection for the what your anger, your disregard for the regulations that people have their own experience in life to find their own intention, their own problems, and most frequently you, the only to make them depression, only to find you specifically and taking notes on your seeking of the help not to be frequent enough for the sadness and anxiety for the patients who only wanted to kill and destroy, not for the children, not for no sake you don't want to live for nothing notable, for the irritability, for the moderation, for what you can find severe, the different research for you can find diagnosing for the your only chronic, severe depression, but you want to smoke it anyway instead of this with the only meaning, deciding to seek the help. I am nowhere for that, for the lashing out, for the loved ones that I can care about, for the nothing what to do to hope or have a source of it. I improve. I want to change myself for the family and for my awareness, and I cannot be depressed and picking on the fights of what's in critical or meaning, still for me to be my own life and reach and teach and go higher, seeks to levels, for not have that to deal with, for not life and the interactions of what you can find significant to those and underlying the factor will be remaining the fact for that to be lying awakened, counseling, for this is what is such a way to handle the problems in which you can find a wish for. Wishing and only like a horseshoe for the effectiveness and the coping and mechanism of never finding, sharing experience, or the taking over the resources alone, the load of resources, the medication which you need as a therapy, the mechanism for the coping act. For this is not remaining for the you to be a youth or child, illness, with a mild concussion, inmates. Like I'm jailed, prison, inside of behind my bars in love. Savage attack for no care and regards.
There's a distance between you and I and our perspectives. In context alone, for the second you speak, for this has no room for the beginning because it makes no sense within subject for the trained eye. For these to be poems and ears when I'm observing, participating within the war games, and yet to be another actor, hailing another movement, for this is roots. Only not to be practical, but the practice for most noticeably ever named inside of you, for the combination of non-fiction, subjectivity. There's a distance between you and I and our perspectives. In context alone, for the second you speak, for this has no room for the beginning because it makes no sense within subject for the trained eye. For these to be poems and ears that I'm observing, participated within the war games, and yet to be another actor, hailing another. There's a distance between you and I and our perspectives. In context alone, for the second you speak, for this has no room for the beginning because it makes no sense within subject for the trained eye. For these to be poems and ears that I'm observing, participated within the war games, and yet to be another actor, hailing another movement, for this is roots. Only not to be practical, but the practice for most noticeably ever named inside of you, for the combination of non-fiction, subjectivity, and tough to balance a strike, but not for the calling of an action, but kind of truth telling for whether or not it's suitable. This is not the forest for the cows, the goats that stand inside of that, the sheep and shepherd, for the immediately putting itself in front of an eye, and waterproof in the notebook inside of that phrase. You can often pay for the talking of so many, for recurring of the casting of the character, for the China side of the observations were meant to you to be the highlight for the ironies, and only working for you to be alive, and the kind of pretending for you to be a poem, for you to be first hand for the sources so you can have an occupying, for the distortion, one excuse for the mind, for you to not be able to soldier for the crowd, for it's only your path, so only not to follow for the work and the meat, for the distance and didn't know it, for the perspective, and not only yours, for the civilians and only beneficiaries, maybe for the world, for life, for the quote, for the only for what you know, for what you say that's not for the penetration, for the simply feeling like it, and it doesn't matter, but it doesn't matter for the I could belong. Saying sorry for the broken road, for the moment, for the understanding, I'm a student, for the seriousness, attempting, and the answers that I'm obscuring the mouth, for the USB, mind for the violence, for the return. There's a distance between you and I and our. There's a distance between you and I and our perspectives. In context alone, for the second you speak, for this has no room for the beginning because it makes no sense within the subject for the trained eye. For these poems and ears that I'm observing, participated within the war games, yet to be another actor, hailing another movement, for this is roots. Only to not be practical, the practice for most noticeably ever named inside of you, for the combination of non-fiction, subjectivity, and tough to balance a strike, but not for the calling of an action, but kind of truth telling for whether or not it's suitable. This is not the forest for the cows, the goats that stand inside of that, the sheep and shepherd, for the immediately putting itself in front of an eye, and waterproof in the notebook inside of that phrase. You can often pay for the talking of so many, for recurring of the casting of the character, for the China side of the observations were meant to you to be the highlight, for the ironies and only working for you to be alive, and the kind of pretending for you to be a poem, for you to be first hand for the sources so you can have an occupying, for the distortion, one excuse for the mind, for you to not be able to soldier for the crowd, if it's only your path, so only not to follow for the work and the need for the distance and didn't know it, for the perspective, and not only yours, but the civilians and only beneficiary, maybe for the world, for the life, for the quote, for the only for what you know, for what you say that's not for the penetration, for the simply feeling like it doesn't matter, but it doesn't matter for the I could belong. Saying sorry for the broken road, for the moment, for the understanding, I'm a student, for the seriously attempting and the answers that obscuring the mouth, for you to be pine for the violence, maybe for the returning it, the stressing and questions and answers and over relacing it with the double meaning of I am more than the kind of the kindred spirit, for the distance to be the training, for the not to be non-autistic, for once, for all for one, for the collection of what you can find hunting, for the powerfulness, for the succeeding, for what we're doing, the work for this and not to be wrong, for the reading between the lines of the signs, for you to find dead questions left like a man who's only angriness, to be the angry, for the depressed man, for you to be melancholy and irritable, not the place but spiritual, for the not to be depressed but spiritual, not for the be depressed but only realize that this is the motivation, the concentration, but not the anger. But this is the following I'm giving to the strong things to heat irritability. And this is the psychiatric for the inclusion of all classifications. Where I can find myself as the professor reducing control over the one typical result from the outburst. This is the core of the symptom. This is the children. This is the adolescents, but this would never made sense. This is the him, including yourself as an adult. For why not be angry, depressed like a child? Maybe at the age of attacking the person with the threatening, not making something but a conundrum. The disorder, the cause and effect. This is going to be a clinic inside of patients. Patients I don't have for you to be not diagnosed because people would take too long for you believing, throwing all these lies into the ears and those that find fears and those appears to take long walks off of your short streams. You know, afterwards, remorse, go to crying, panic attacks, and those on your society for this majority feeling bad for your actions, anxiety, what you find in other people who decided to be relatively connected to the recollection, what your anger, your disregard for the regulations that people have their own experience in life to find their own potential, their own problems, most frequently you, the only to make an impression, only to find you specifically taking notes on your seeking of the help, not to be frequent enough for the sadness and anxiety for the patients who only wanted to kill and destroy, not for the children, not for no sake you don't want to live for nothing notable, for the irritability, for the moderation, for what you can find severe, the different research where you can find diagnosing for the your only minor, chronic, severe depression, but you want to smoke it anyway instead of this with the only meaning deciding to seek the help. I am nowhere for the lashing out for the loved ones that I can care about, for the nothing what to do to hope or have a source of it. I improve. I want to change myself for the family and for my awareness, and I cannot be depressed and picking on the fights of what's in critical or meaning still for me to be my own life and reach and teach and grow higher, seeks to levels, will not have that to deal with for not life and the interactions of what you can find significant to those and underlying for the factor will be remaining the fact for that to be lying awake and counseling. For this is what's such a way to handle the problems of what you can find a wish for, wishing and wishing upon it like a horseshoe for the effectiveness and the coping and mechanism with the never finding, sharing experience or the taking over the resources alone for the load of resources, the medication which you need as a therapy and mechanism for the coping act. For this is not remaining for the you to be a youth or child, illness. With a mild concussion, inmates, like I'm jailed, prison, inside of behind my bars in love. Savage attack for no care and regards. The hindrance, taking the care. Channeling of truth, refine it within yourself in a lifetime for the thinking about the nature but deeply influenced along subsequent in itself being ideological for the conclusion that you can be genuinely pessimistic. For you saw reality driven by the blind. Will it manifest itself for the human for the illogical, the pointless of desires for you? Or what is through for your criticism with what you can find material pleasures which you give up in the fight for against the irrational will? Your defeat. One didn't attempt to strike the balance for the attempt to nothing less for the clear for hand for the deeply thought about the issues but never the conclusion for the unsatisfied truth of them. For you can find the wisdom of life. You did something unlike for deviation for you to be remiss with the outline to be even happy with this world for the be long ago for the insightful point for the struggles existence shows you the two faces of the human happiness and the pain and boredom. We may go further to any degree for the fortunates and what we can be one for the approaching for the other for the presenting and the fact for the more for the less violent oscillation between the two. These reasons are only external for the objective is it's only surrounding for the between the border for the accountability for the class of engagement and insecurities and struggle and the need for the other words of the pain for the up at the carpet the constant and often desperate battle for the stuck in the pleasure pain with your axis in the traditional way for the science soon for that to be inhabited anger and joy. Your complex is summarized by the mixture of going in for the particular time for the orientation for one for the instance of another to be according to your pleasure. Or that information for the idea what you need for this is what you have an experience for the effect for the change in the conscious reality. Particularly emotions in the cognitive wave that only existed because you create the linguistics and distinctions between them for the angers only amongst you, for the calling of it. Take it a step further for the distinction of pain for what you can call for your present. The good feeling with your survival would be out of that question, which you would get away from the towards another person, providing another long-term satisfaction for you. Unwelcome and the deep existential similarities for the torturous in cases and perhaps maybe the leading of annihilating. The depression you leave behind, the preoccupations, and maybe the retreat to the world of thought for your creation of inward wealth and health. And the pain cannot be escaped through the mind, but cannot make the case for the breaking of the shackles in the way you least thought. Associated by it, somehow you perhaps think it sounds better on paper than in real life, or for the verbal lips and the emotion is right, but there's no really hard distinction between how you live your life outside of the pleasure and the pain, but it's all besides the same coin. And the thought of some instance of the ways that you cause dissatisfaction to others. You cannot control that. Or is there a better solution? Maybe it is to create the inward love, by the cultivating a more holistic mind, the body in connection which you can pay so much attention to everybody between your thoughts. In many cases of the pain, the boredom, the guilt, comes the arguments and dissatisfaction between observing your body and your lives. Though the nature affects you from the experience in it. That's done intention to keep finding yourself therapeutic for the mental escape of your breathing exercises and what it reminds you of exists more for the experience of the daily basis and whatever it is you take to boil your mind and surface. You don't think about your body and fragments because it's automated for the parts of the awareness and the consciousness in place with the point of new direction and pain that it brings. Subjective into the internal for the working together for taking someone away. Regardless of whether or not you can find everything within your courage and the reality is, rather than selling for unfound idealism for your philosophy is understandable enough to be applied for not what clears out some muddy waters. The conditions in which you identified yourself with the modern biology is what step you take further off the axis, sustaining your own pleasure for the leading to your own demise. What's something wrong for need to fix it for the tense and persistent, but only the problem solved, not prevented for the pleasures. On the other hand, for reward for continuous present, it seems to be rewarding for the leading into attain your dullness for the retreating of the mind for the completely separate link between your experience and your pain. Others though, the other mind for the holistic, it may be to manage to challenge and feelings and sensations that are masked behind the inattentive mind. You can have that loop for the connection, you can find the reality for the loop, and often ignore that at its own peril. The dissatisfaction of the existence of whether we not wanted to deal with it makes all the difference with the effort. The intensity is more noisy for the unique insights that you're running through the mouth and easy going as it may be for the exclusive. There's no peer in the mind for it to be irresistible for the lack of necessities what's needed for those of the ones. Cognitive and modern, but you can become the needs and you can let it down for the nowhere to be found. I'll be engaged with words to develop the pain to ever carry on a constant and often desperate battle. I'm a man. And I forget what all the sufferings are, and I'm in my thought and happy. Of course, I would die fairly. It's in a channeling of truth. You find it within yourself in a lifetime for thinking about the nature of deep influence along subsequent, and itself being analogical for the conclusion that you can be genuinely pessimistic. You saw reality driven by the blind. Will it manifest itself in the human for the illogical points of desires for you? You find it within yourself in a lifetime. In a channeling of truth. You find it within yourself in a lifetime for the thinking about the nature of deeply influence along subsequent, and itself being analogical for the conclusion that you can be genuinely pessimistic. You saw reality driven by the blind. Will it manifest itself in the human for the illogical, the pointless of desires for you? Or what is through for your criticism with what you can find material pleasures which you give up for the fight against the irrational will? Your defeat. One didn't attempt to strike the balance for the attempt to nothing less for the clear of the hand for the deeply thought about the issues, but near for the conclusion for the unsatisfied truth of them. For you can find the wisdom of life if you did something unlike the deviation for you, the pyramid's with the outline. You can be loud and happy with this world for the be long ago for the insightful point of the struggles, existence. It shows you the two faces of the human happiness, the pain and boredom. We may go further. To any degree for the fortunates and what we can be one for the approaching for the other, for the presenting, and the fact for the more for the left side and oscillation between the two. These reasons are only external for the objective is only surrounding for between the boredom and the accountability for the class of engagement, insecurity and struggling and the need for the other words of the pain, up at the care of the constant and often desperate battle for the stuck in the pleasure. Pain still acts in the traditional ways of the science, soon for that to be inhabited, anger and joy. Your complex is summarized by the mixture of going in for the particular time, for the orientation, and for one for the instance of another to be according to your pleasure. Or that information for the idea what you need for this is what you have experienced for the effect for the change in the conscious reality. Particularly emotions in the cognitive wave only existed because you created linguistics and distinctions between them. For the angers only amongst you, for the calling of the take it a step further for this distinction of pain for what you can call for your present. The good feeling which you survive will be out of that question, which you would get away from the towards another person, providing another long-term satisfaction for you. Unwelcome and the deep existential similarities for the torturous in cases and perhaps maybe the leading of annihilating. depression you leave behind, the preoccupations, maybe the retreat for the brother thought for your creation. If it one for the taking of one's hand cannot be escaped with the mind, it's not make the case for the breaking of the shackles away from the way you least thought must run away from your own child, associated by your family. You must have anything like this for the never sounds better. Self-capable for your life, even the turtle lips, and they think you right, cutting down your own instincts, thinking you how you live your life. Maybe some of us still pain, but you do not think about nothing for something it will never happen. You see, it's not your ways, it's a matter of fact, it's reflection. You do not think at all for the things truth, the nature of nature, yourself will be revealed to the truth of nature. The universe, maybe it is the creativity, classification of the legendary. This misunderstanding, let out in connection, you can pay something to this getting out of sleep, between your thoughts, and like in cases with pain or care. This is scripture for arguments, and this has facts, these are quotes, and body written lies, books and imagination, verses, ideas, and this is for different instruments, attention for keeping mind and eye, speaking of what's not to the same. I believe in exercise, and love takes me like this is a experience, and stating makes its ways for you to be the kind of actor of your mind, so you should not have accountability. This is the contribution for you to be a Pisces or a Virgo. Maybe the Virgo for letting go, the sun with the moon to the stars, and not having a shady side. Maybe the understanding that you cannot reside for the time you breathe. But I'm understanding the wishing the promise, the better ways you do. Never having a support system at all for when I'm separate. You do not care for the depressing that you have caused. You do not care for none of people and you give everyone else's flaws and hurt yourself with the understanding that you have an issue with your mental instability. Is the reason why you wanted to take the dimension surrounding. So look around, so people around you are looking at the world differently. Maybe the emotion, the happiness that you feel are not exactly what you think. Maybe these are not supposed to just poems or songs, and maybe this is relative to just you. If the shoe fits, then you should wear it out. You move your ego, you can spread it and let it go on around with your happiness. And this is because I love you. Endless chances of you coming back from you and down. This is the rest of the brothers and care. And I don't care if you would never cross my mind like I was walking through it like a water block and taking to school and give the education of whether I think it's okay for me. This is the hope, this is the understanding, this is the happiness, this is the melancholy, this is the sadness, this is the love and sound for no reason for the blessing of the muscle for the mistakes that you forget. Expressing with the gratitude and the attitude is what I have for you. Do not understand where I'm coming from. These are not the words. This is to become a heartless distraction, becoming smarter for the happiness and not depend upon someone else anymore. This will only come from me for spending too much time wondering why we're not good enough. We're wasting too much time for ourselves and dumbing us down. We're not to step and see what's good, whether and what's the time for the headache or the heart's closed. Never getting a chance to look up off the ground, seeing the sun is shining for the tomorrow's another day. For this is the words, this is the scene, this is the expression, this is the deservance, this is who doesn't. This is me trying to find and criticizing yourself for the years and have to work for the acceptance of yourself. And when it does happen, no offense, but you can find the worst type in the person to the deep. Understanding of what you could never obtain and have the nerves for it, not enough for the right person for the settlement with someone who doesn't want to set up and change. This is not the quotes, this is not the poetry, this is not the poem. This is struggling for something with people all around realizing everything is your purpose and you're struggling for something. This is the understanding you might not find for the matter of the growth, but you can sound to someone to a favorism. Maybe reminding you someone for the reminding of you, for the you to be the smile for the compliment for themselves and not to be the complete page emotions. Leave that grace for something to fall in love and maybe to have it to kill them one day. The back of the wounds of someone to survive that, and maybe the forgiveness of gold to come for those who never had their life and taken away from the simple fact that you could be having the best day of your life and not be so lucky. I am not surrounding you, not guaranteed for yacht to act, yacht to be the sweet present, terrifying, strange, beautiful, something unbelievable. Maybe you're not what I thought you were. Maybe she was just a bird and not an action. Or maybe the cause is better. You don't have to explain your dreams or your belong to in your own life. You can be the opening of your eyes and experiencing yourself to be happy. Maybe straight, cry, maybe sad. Maybe it's hard for the happiness of not being starved, deserving. Maybe just being a bad person. Now I'm not going to live your life. I can be okay. Not for that, it's not wrong. But the broken is too strong. Find a vessel. That's what your life is just not enough. Your personality, your stress and anxiety that they give. People must smash. I so hard to keep that promise from the world that is good. They're so busy with life and have the hate, regret, and fear that you want to be a warrior. Just to hit the block bottles and listen to the shit talking about it. And maybe it's just stand a change and I speak to the congregation. Not the silence, not to be damned. Respect for you, for the disrespect, for the still respecting them. For allowing actions and others to increase in your good manners and not to be the representation of myself. Maybe these are two words that can change. Maybe the mindset's towards it. Not to spoil the ending for the youth, now the ending for the beginning is only you. This is the challenge of fire within the soul. This cannot become more. Not to create limitations, but you should deep thought. You should deep thought when somebody can see you inside it. You travel far enough, you can cheer yourself. You'll never find this way to come back to the private for the love and key, the best way. Who is one for the taking and one's care? That would be absurd. Don't you think you must want to take it?
Who is one for the taking and one's care? That would be absurd, and don't you think you must run away from the conditioning as you must run away from your own job and even from your family? You must do anything like this for the never concerning yourself, for the body, for the mentally learning to go, for the thinking and lesson, cutting down your own ego with thinking of your thoughts. Or maybe some of you still believe that you do not think about nothing for something, it will never happen. This is not true. It's a matter of fact, it's reversed. You do not think at all for the lens of truth, for the nature of nature, for yourself, for the reveal, for the truth of nature, universe to be revealed. So this is the classification for the letting go. This is the understanding of letting go your ego, unsnapping. This is the universe fully knowing its cause it's ignored for the enlightenment that cause what you don't care. This is scripture for the written for the eternity. These are quotes. These are written for the books and lamps, and these are for the verses I wrote. This is for difference, and this is the difference between you and I. For the spirit must not be contained. I will be a lamp, and this is blood expedited. For this is the switching. For this is the unique ways for you to be the counteraction. For your contribution should not have an accountability. This is the contribution for you to be a Pisces or a Virgo. Maybe the Virgo for letting go of the sun and the moon for the stars and not having a shady side. Maybe the understanding that you cannot reside for the dying or reading and learning, spinning and wishing upon me for the better ways of you never having a support system at all for when I'm suffering. You do not care for the depression that you have caused. You do not care for none of you when you look at everyone else's flaws and look at your own self with the understanding that you have an issue with your mental instability. It's the reason why you wanted to take the dimension surrounding, so look around, so the people around you are looking at the world differently. Maybe the connection and the happiness that you feel are not exactly what you think. Maybe these are not words of just poems and songs, and maybe this is relative to just you. If a shoe fits, then you should wear it out and mute your ego and your credit and wrong with your happiness. And this is because I love you. Endless chances of coming back with you and him to death. So that's what the purpose of carrying. And I don't care if you will never cross my mind like I was walking through like a water truck, taking a school kid for the education of wherever I think it's okay for my leave. This is the quote. This is the understanding. This is the happiness. This is the melancholy. This is the sadness. This is the perfect smile for no reason for the blessing of a muscle for the mistakes that it would give for the spectrum. Gratitude and attitude is what I have for you. Not to understand where I'm coming from. This is not the clothes. This is to become an art. This is just an act of becoming smarter for the happiness of not getting
so many days, oh so many wishes, but I don't know why we picked on Saturday. Should be just like all the days, but I don't know why it's never quite possible Monday. Saturday. She went buzz on. I turned to break through a southern pub with the truck of fire. She went buzz on. I don't know why we picked on Saturday.